will be no real non-controlled currency in the world.
We're coming for you, banks.
Increasing the block size to 32 megabytes right now. What would be the top 5 arguments that would get hurled against me?
That's a good one.
There are a few that the big blockers got right.
Ching, like all these coins splash into the wallets of all the winners. I love that.
There's a new threat out there. It's crypto.
Hello and welcome back to the Bitcoin Cash podcast, following Bitcoin Cash on its rise to global reserve currency, going to number 1, same as always. This is episode number 106. CashTokens code and BCH historiography featuring Mathieu Geukens. Today is Saturday, the 27th of January, 2024. And our guest is the developer of the Cashonize wallet. He's part of the Cash Ninjas project. He's part of CashScript, doing a little bit of everything in the scene. And most importantly, we'll be speaking at BCH Bliss. Welcome back to the show, Mathieu. How are you doing, man?
Hello, glad to be on again. And thanks for the introduction. I really like the name Cash in my projects, it seems.
Yes. Good branding, consistent branding.
Yeah, and a lot has happened since we last spoke, I think right before the CashTokens upgrade. So,
yeah, it's funny you say that about the branding, because that's actually something that the community has had like a huge win out of. Is everybody always says, oh, this whole Bitcoin Cash thing, isn't it just a worse branding than the original Bitcoin thing? But it's kind of not, in the sense that they've already squatted all the domain names and all the like Bitcoin meetup, the Bitcoin conference and all that stuff. And so then we can just call our things the cash whatever, and it kind of fits. So yeah, it works. I think it works out for us in that.
Or like BCH Bliss, you don't even need the cash in the branding. If you do proper branding, you can have your own independent name and still stand out.
And as time goes on, I'm loving the whole green more and more and more. Like, that just seems to be just infecting. Green was never my favorite color. I always really liked black and purple, like a nice royal purple. But these days, I spend so much time looking at green, like graphics and green stuff for Bitcoin Cash, and I have so much positive association with all the people in Bitcoin Cash and stuff that now I'm like, yeah, green, isn't green the best color?
Yeah, there was hard work to actually get to this green, because in the very early days, I think it will still pop up if you just search for the Bitcoin Cash logo. You will still see some like original orange logos with the wings, like the
cash bill,
square. So
that was always worse. That was always worse. Like, I was never a fan of that cash. I was like, okay, well, you got to have something to sort of differentiate it, but
definitely.
It's circular is so much better, because you can easily put a circle inside a square thing for branding if you need to, but you can't easily put a square inside of like a circle thing. It doesn't look as good. So it was always better. And I like that it's tilted up as well too. Now, in hindsight, it's kind of like, wasn't that always better? It looks more optimistic, right?
Yeah.
The sort of downwards.
Yeah, that's true.
Is it, I don't know, is it squaring the circle or circling the square in alchemy that's like...
It's squaring the circle is the phrase.
Okay. I wonder if Vin had any takes on that when we were doing the wars.
Yeah, well, might have to ask him sometime. I think he hasn't unblocked me on Twitter yet, so who knows? Who knows what he's up to? I kind of wonder about that. Like him and like Dan Held is another one. Dan Held blocked me when I had like 300 followers, and now I've got about 8,000. And at some point, he's going to start hearing about Bitcoin Cash or the Bitcoin Cash podcast and be like, what the hell's going on with this? And then look, and I'll be at like 300,000 subscribers. Be like, what is even going on? But yeah, if you want to stick your head in the sand, you can. Anyway, so getting on to Bliss. So it's 107 days until BCH Bliss. There are 43 tickets remaining on TapSwap. So we've been selling through a few of them, but still got plenty there. So if you're interested, go on www.bliss.cash. You have to have the www because I haven't fixed the DNS stuff yet. And TapSwap, .cash is looking like it's going to be really great. There's 43 tickets left, so we've already sold kind of about half of them. People are getting excited. Community's been responding well to the Jessica NFTs and the branding and all that. And Matthew, you're going to be speaking, right? So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about what's your plans. Can we get a preview or what?
Yeah. So Jonathan asked me, and in the beginning I wasn't sure what, because there's a lot of things you could talk about, but I think because in line with the videos I make, like keep doing progress updates of the news, everything happening with CashTokens, I want to do CashTokens, the ecosystem after 1 year. So a bit also looking back, but also looking forward. So what new things do we need, or how can we improve upon the current setup? And yeah,
so maybe like 1 year in hindsight, and then 1 year into
exactly 1 year,
projecting.
because with the new upgrade, the yearly schedule, it will also be nice.
Upgrade to upgrade. And do you have any thoughts as well? Now I've been trying to bring into the discussion a little bit, now that like Abla is already sort of locked in and everybody's agreed on that and it's even been implemented. Now we're just mostly just kind of waiting for it to kick in, which is a sign of the fact that the whole pipeline is really mature, right? When does that ever happen in software, that you get everything done and then you're like, oh, we've got 3 months to spare, you know? But for 2025, there's various things that are being floated and discussed around the community. Do you have any takes on that? What are you looking forward to, maybe upgrades or things to at least discuss for 2025?
Yeah, so I have been pushing the VM, the retargeted VM limits proposal from Jason Reisner a bit. And I know that Kalin, so the BCHN developer who also works on Electron Cash, he has started making like a separate branch, and he will soon be implementing the changes. So the changes are not that big because they're just new limits for the software, but also implementing all the tests, which is which will be much more work to prove that the new limits are robust and that they have all the advantages that they should.
So for people who don't know, just expand a little bit more. What is this VM limits? Why do we need to adjust them? What's involved in that?
Yeah, so if you start writing smart contracts for Bitcoin Cash, one of the things that you likely will run into is the opcode limit, or the byte size limit. So you can only have 200 opcodes, 201 to be precise, in a smart contract. So this is tiny because like with CashCrypt, you don't write in opcodes, they get compiled down in opcodes. So one line of code can actually be 10 opcodes, for example, because it might do some juggling on the stack. So if you compile down to a low-level script, it might need to, it's hard to explain if you don't know the low-level workings, but it's just a way to compile from a high-level language to a lower-level language, and you quickly run into limits. And it's not nice because this limits what you can do, the applications you can build, the smart contracts, the DEXs, the DeFi protocols. And these limits are there because of a very dumb reason. They are just badly implemented limits, because they don't limit, they limit opcodes as a general thing, but doing, for example, addition or multiplication or duplicating an element on the stack are very cheap operations, but doing other operations like hashing is very expensive. So there should be two different limits. So hashing, or specifically the hash digest, should be counted separately from the actual opcodes. So it doesn't matter if you do 10 additions or 10 times you do a swap with different items on the stack. What mainly matters is the hashing limit, but also how large. So you don't want to have like duplicating the stack size, so you get to a very large memory usage. So there should also be a count for that. So the proposal retargets the limits in a way that the worst case doesn't change, but the best case, like the normal usage of smart contract developers, allows for, I think it will allow for 10,000 bytes contract. So it's an increase of 20. So the smart contract developers will have 20 times the space to work with.
Wow. Okay. So that's a pretty significant jump up. And like, let's say in comparison to Ethereum, right? Do they have any problems with any of this? I mean, obviously they have various scaling limitations. They also have a completely different architecture, but I don't actually know. They have the gas
because of the gas.
It's kind of
I think they just I think they just have the gas limits. So we have the big advantage that we don't have gas. So this is a fundamental difference between because with gas you also don't need you can be sure how much gas your transaction will cost before sending it, and then
really I didn't know that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, this is why people do transactions and then they end up failing, and then you pay the gas cost. You pay the gas cost, but your transaction didn't go through. So this is a model that we luckily don't know in Bitcoin or in Bitcoin Cash. Because it's the worst user experience, especially when the fees are high. So you had people doing a swap for like $100, and then because the chain was so congested, $100 wasn't even enough for the transaction. So the gas wasn't enough to pay for the transaction. So you lose the $100, so the $100 worth of gas fees, but your transaction didn't happen. So your swap that you actually wanted to do didn't go through at all. Whereas in Bitcoin, of course, either even when the fees are high in BTC, you either have that your transaction is included and you pay the fee, or maybe your transaction didn't get in a block, but you never paid the fee, like it's in limbo or it got kicked out of the mempool, but you can never pay for something that doesn't go through.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And obviously, I think this sounds like a really great idea, like provided that we test it and stuff. Is there any historical reason, like you said, maybe it was just poorly implemented, but it seems strange that it would just be so out of whack with what is realistically possible? Is it possible that we're having more opcodes now because of hardware development or improvements in the node software in the last 15 years? Or was Satoshi just kind of like, look, let me just bang on some load limits and like move on to the next thing?
I think the limits might have been from before even pay-to-script hash existed. So the standard way we do smart contracts now is you send to an address that's just the hash of the contract. And this is a nice standardized way. So you can have addresses for smart contracts. Because otherwise, if you do non-standard locking scripts, then you can't actually have like nice, concise addresses. Then the locking script would be the whole contract already. And another disadvantage is that the sender would have to pay the fee for how big the contract is. Whereas with pay-to-script hash, so you get a hash, so it gives some privacy, but also the sender doesn't care. So if I want to send a BCH to you, Jeremy, I don't care if you're using a multisig because it's all compressed down to a single hash. So I, as a sender, don't care if you are using something complicated. So I think it's a historical reason why these limits exist. And they really should be like looked at again because it's just some leftovers from the early Bitcoin days.
Yeah, okay. And I know Emergent Reasons was very outspoken about when this was brought up in some discussion that he's in favor, as far as I'm aware, of us doing this chip, but also being like, look, somebody really needs to actually make sure that we don't fuck it up. And like you're saying, maybe there's different categories of things, and because potentially it could open a vulnerability, right? If you put the limits too high on something that was inappropriate, then somebody could like DDoS nodes, right, by submitting transactions that made them run through way more operations than necessary, right?
So what we definitely don't want to do is the logical idea of, the limit is at 200 opcodes, let's just raise it to 1,000 opcodes. So 5 times bigger. What's the worst that can happen? But actually the worst it's pretty bad. You can do like a hashing of hashing of hashing, or you can do keep duplicating the memory that you're using on the stack. So it doubles with each opcode. And this is simply because the current limits are so poorly designed. So it doesn't allow for cheap operation. It limits them way too much. But for expensive operation like hashing and checking that there's no overuse of the memory, it doesn't check that at all. So that's why the current 200 is just a bad limit. So the retargeting would remove the opcode limit altogether and implement different limits, which are way more targeted.
Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. So obviously we've got to make sure we've got that stuff sort of hashed out ahead of time. But yeah.
And then one more thing, of course, that I hope to see, but I'm not sure what the current progress is the UTXO commitments. I think this is a huge argument in favor of the big blockers. If you can say syncing a node, it takes you, I don't know, a few days. For us, it's just getting the UTXO commitment from the block, and then you can just get the UTXO set, and you don't actually need to sync the whole chain. Yeah, so I think that would be a huge advantage. And of course, some nodes still want all the transaction history of every transaction that ever happened around the world. But most of them are mainly interested in who owns what money now. So they just want the UTXO set. And the quickest way they can get to the UTXO set in the most trustless way is what they want. So these UTXO commitments would also be a great upgrade for scaling.
Do you know what the current progress on that is? I'm aware that Verde has made like a sort of fast sync proof of concept kind of thing in their own node, but as far as that's obviously not at the protocol level. And I also saw there was some back and forth on Bitcoin Cash research about like different ways that you can set up the commitments, which have different trade-offs in terms of how much space they take or how much the download time is impacted or whatever. What's the current on that? Do you know?
Yeah, so my impression is a bit the same, that there's still discussion and research ongoing about the best trade-offs. But that there's a general consensus that, yeah, this is something that we want, just like for the adaptive block size limit. This was also, there was like a general consensus that, okay, yeah, we want to solve this block size limit issue once and for all, that developers don't need to get together and discuss all the trade-offs of changing the limit every now and again. So I think for the UTXO commitments is the same, but indeed someone has to really drive it forward and evaluate all the different proposals, because there's a few different technical ways to implement it, which all have like different trade-offs. Yeah, so I'm not too deep in the weeds, but I hope the Bitcoin Verde guys that they drive it forward.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that would be an absolutely huge step forward if we could get, like I've said before, I think that and quantum, sort of some kind of quantum protection at some point, probably also pretty essential to the long-term sort of success of the project. Although that's been that's a bit more what do you call it? That's a bit more vague at this point in time. That's not an immediate pressing concern. Something else that's been mentioned is sub-satoshis. Do you have any thoughts on getting that in either next year or in the future at some point?
So I saw the proposal and I like or the general outline of how it would be done. I think it was by Tom who sparked the discussion. And I think that proposal wanted to introduce a new transaction version. And the problem for me with introducing a new transaction version is there's a whole list of things that we want to get in when we do a new transaction version, because it breaks indexes and it generally, a large part of the ecosystem has to upgrade. Like it's whereas with the cash tokens upgrade, we managed to do things in a way that we don't require a new transaction version. So that's the preferable way of doing things. So I'm just careful about the design of introducing a new transaction version, because this, if you want to do it, there's a whole list of other things we want to change. So it's
like what? I'm not aware of things like that. What kind of things?
Yeah, just also optimizations, things in the transaction version that takes too many bytes. Like I think lock times. You can take a look at a PMV3 proposal, which came before cash tokens, and list a few other things that it would change when it introduced a new transaction format, just to tidy up just some leftovers, historical leftovers from in the early Bitcoin days that we know we can do better now, and we can do some optimization that will save a percentage on each transaction size. But I like the idea of sub-satoshis, but I also think it's an upgrade that will be like it has a cost for the ecosystem now, and the benefit is only very long term. And it's always better to do the cost. It's better to break an ecosystem early rather than when it's very big. But the disadvantage is if we do something that has a cost now, but the benefit is very intangible, then we might hurt ourselves really in the short term. Whereas I would love to see things in the short term that benefit us instead of make everybody's life a bit more difficult.
Yeah, no, fair we're always trying to sort of balance those two things. Like you say, the earlier you fix the problem, the less the less you have to pay that cost down the road. But on the other hand, sometimes you just got to fix the problem that's in front of you, because if you're too obsessed with 10 years, away, you might fuck it up in the 1 year and then you never even get there, or you underperform because of the exponential impact of those more immediate changes. Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I'm glad that it's something that the Bitcoin Cash community is both aware of and spends time thinking about, because it takes a long time for the community to sort of chew over and reflect on these issues. A lot of it is sort of the developers, obviously, but even just the general community as well too. If they're hearing about these changes, they're interested, they can read up, they can be involved if they want to, or if they don't want to, that's fine, but they kind of have it on their radar. And then when it comes together, nobody's suddenly in a big panic, like, where did this come from, and anything like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so just before we move on, so I've got a video coming, which I haven't made yet, but I need to make it on tapswap.cash, which will show how to buy a Bliss NFT for anybody who wants to get involved in that. So if you're interested in it and you had a look but you're a bit confused or something like that, I'm going to make a guide, probably with Cashonize actually, showing how to do that. And one last little bit of hype for Bliss this week is our meme of the week, which comes from Almas Dast, who is the original progenitor of the whole Jessica Abler thing to begin with. Made a cool little 20-second, it's like a rap intro, hyping up the upgrade. So let's just have a quick listen to that, because I was loving these vibes.
Everyone, this is Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica. That's me.
Oh, hey, Jessica. The lovely Jessica. And today we're joined by Jessica. Jessica.
Jessica. Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
Jessica.
Please welcome Jessica.
Hey, Jessica.
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 I'm Jessica. Please welcome Jessica. Hey, this is Jessica.
Yeah. So I was just like, wow, this is super. This whole Jessica thing has really taken off. It started out with just like, okay, we got the block size limit adjuster. Then the name got changed to Abla. Bitcoin Cash Orders made a meme of the one with the dominoes where he changed it to the name to Abla. And then suddenly it was like we had the original memes about Jessica Abla, and then we had the NFTs, and now we've got this sort of music coming out and people making little AI GIFs and stuff like that. So it really just goes to show the sort of group creativity, I think, of the Bitcoin Cash community can really flourish based off the smallest random things that you wouldn't really expect, right?
Yeah, I really love the NFT tickets to make them like collectibles. And
do you like your one? Which number have you got? You must.
I think number 9. I got number 9. I shared it on Twitter, on X.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I can show it right now, but I have it posted on Twitter. So.
Yeah. No, it's very cool. I'm going to be interested.
Bliss number 9. It's with bubblegum.
Well, they almost all have bubblegum.
Oh. Mine is not a rare one. What are you saying? An ultra rare, Jessica?
Well, it's a low number. Number 9 is pretty good. There's out of 100, but they almost all have bubblegum and headsets as well too. But I'll be really interested to, because I've been just loving watching on TapSwap, like as the tickets get sold, as to which ones get bought. So we'll just see at the end, like, which are the least favored Jessicas, the leftovers, like rejected ones that nobody wanted. Because I guess everybody has different taste, when it comes to that.
Yeah, I was just looking at TapSwap now, and actually, if you go to it, you will see the wallet connect with the supporting wallet. So I think many people will be able, even if they haven't used it, they will understand which wallets are compatible. And yeah, once your wallet is linked, then you will see your balance and you can quite easily buy. So I hope that by now the interface is good enough that people can find their way around. Even though it's not the slickest yet, it definitely has come a long way from the first version that came out in May of last year.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. And that's where I think it's easy for us to overvalue or maybe underestimate how tricky it is to actually get down the rabbit hole on all this. Like for the Bliss tickets, obviously quite a few of the people involved are people who are deep in the BCH ecosystem every day. They're involved in this yada yada. But some of the people who are coming or who are going to be involved are just people who are like, Bitcoin Cash, that's pretty cool. And maybe they have some BCH on Trust Wallet that still doesn't even support, the new address format or something. And they're way out of the loop. Like for them, okay, you've got to go on this site, TapSwap, you've got to connect up your wallet. Now you're buying an NFT, you need to store it somewhere and be able to display it when you come to the event. Like there's just so many steps that I think we can easily overlook. And obviously this will also be fine because by next year, if we do the same thing next year, the tooling will have improved orders of magnitude. So it will just get easier and easier over time. But at the moment, it is still definitely, and plus people get more familiar with all these concepts. But just right now, I do think it is kind of like an extra barrier to entry, which I don't like because it makes it harder for people to get tickets. But on the other hand, I think it does also add to the historical nature of it. Then people will be able to say in hindsight, like, I remember when it was so hard to do all this stuff and when it was so new and different and somebody did NFT tickets.
It depends on your target audience as well. So because the people coming to such a conference will probably be like quite motivated and following along. Whereas if you want to target Trust Wallet users or something like that, then indeed this would be not a good approach. But I think for 100 tickets for the conference, like the people who want to come, I think they will be interested to try out TapSwap, even if they are not inherently interested in NFTs or something.
Yes, exactly. And
the only barrier that I've seen, it seems to happen with the gurus people too, and it's just like the kind of the novel experience of using Wallet Connect, where it's not all in that exchange window. But aside from that, I think the guide is like open 2 URLs, click this button, go back to this other tab, click that button, go back to tab 1, you're good to go. Like, and it's just, it'd be a real simple guide. It's just I think it's weird for people to go, why isn't this all in one website? But we've talked about why that's a good thing before. So,
and that's also the advantage. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, well, that's right. Exactly. That's the thing. It's going to, as people become more familiar with this concept of, okay, your wallet software is able to talk to other sites and stuff like that would just become a known thing, which right now, nobody is used to, even in the BCH ecosystem, but let alone in the rest of crypto. Sort of with MetaMask, people kind of get that. It pops up, you've got to connect and all that. But even then, even MetaMask is just way ahead of like a lot of people. They're like, what is it? So confusing the first time you use it, right?
Yeah, that's the advantage, I think, of having a browser extension, is it can at least just pop up in your face like a proof. Whereas with if you have a separate tab, then it's a little, it's probably the message says it changed your tab, but people think it's just loading or it got stuck. They don't see anything happening, and if they don't know that they need to click the other tab, then they might just give up or think something is wrong.
I'm kind of curious. Like this is a very small implementation detail, I think. But is it just like a pop-up modal, or is it like the alert, like built-in browser alert?
It's a modal. So the browser alert is totally not customizable. You can't even, I think, copy paste from alert windows.
The reason why I ask was because I know the alert has that kind of interesting property where it highlights whatever tab the alert's coming from. And I wonder if you can take that and use it in this pop-up modal just to be, this is the tab, look at me.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm not sure actually.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll figure out over time. It'll just get iterated a little bit, and it's always the two things will meet in the middle. On one hand, the tech will get better and the UI will improve, and on the other hand, people will also get more familiar with these concepts and how it works. And then before too long, it'll just be standard. Everybody just know exactly how it works as well. Once we've got mostly it's with Cashonize, we'll talk about it in a second, but like with the mobile wallets as well too, there's a ton that we can do there that you just scan a QR code and it's just all pops up in your face, and just lots to be improved on there. Okay, got to check in with the price this week. USD $240.17 for one BCH, which is flat. One BTC buys 174.1 BCH, also pretty flat, and one ETH buys only 9.4 BCH. We've improved on the ratio there. It's funny you talk about when we were talking before the last cash tokens upgrade. I'm pretty sure in USD, I'm pretty sure we've come a long way. It was probably like like $130 max at that time, maybe even less. So how have you been enjoying the market over the last year? And do you think that the cash tokens upgrade has directly played into that?
Yeah, so I remember last podcast when I was on the other time, we talked about will cash tokens cause a pump in the BCH price, and we said probably not, but it would be nice. And I think the day itself was quite uneventful, but then a month or so later, or maybe a few weeks only, there was suddenly a huge almost increase with 3x. Yeah, so that was definitely unexpected, but I also think it was unrelated. It was probably more had to do with exchange shenanigans or something like that, with people shorting and then the shorts getting liquidated when there's too much buying pressure, because otherwise it's not normal to see these huge spikes. And I think many people prefer a little bit more steady price growth, so it's at least organic. But yeah, we got what we got, so a huge sudden price increase. If you were holding, congratulations, but otherwise, yeah, it's a bit weird.
Yeah, I think it's more of a long tail type of thing. We just need to wait as the infrastructure and ecosystem builds up. It's one of those things. It's like the payoff comes in some cases all at once for work that had been exponentially building over a long period of time, right? Like the price pumps that we get in 2025 will probably be a result of the cash tokens work that started in 2021 and just carried along, and then wallets got better and UI got better and apps got better and blah blah blah, and then it hits a critical mass, right, when everybody kind of gets involved, I feel like. So maybe that's a good way to start talking about history. We were talking before the show about historiography. What's the difference between history and historiography? So according to Google Brave definitions, historiography, noun 1, the principles, theories, or methodology of scholarly historical research and presentation. Now, I bring this up because that's what I'm doing on the show on Bitcoin Cash podcast, and it says on the website one of the goals is to provide a bit of a historical record of what has happened in Bitcoin Cash, and you're doing the same thing, and you've written a yearly series of articles on read.cash from 2018 to 2023, except for 2021, reviewing the year in Bitcoin Cash every year of what happened, what were the most notable things, and some projects launching and community controversies and all that stuff. So talk to us a little bit about this series. How did it get started, and why has it continued?
Yeah, so the main reason why it got started was because I saw an opportunity to do something cool and interesting that nobody else was really doing. So yeah, my way to document everything that was going on, also during the more contentious times, like and luckily that's the recent years have been much more calm. But for example, with the ABC split, which led to eCash, there was a lot of uncertainty, and things were changing seemingly by the week with new information coming out, and the uncertainty during those times is very high. So I think it's quite quickly forgotten also, which is good. But also, if you want to reflect back, then it gets harder to put you back in the shoes of those times, because now it's evident what happened. But back then, it certainly was not clear what would happen. And also there was this, in that specific case, there was the issue with replay protection and people not understanding how, if you do a transaction on BCH, it would actually could be replayed on eCash. So you could actually accidentally transfer the coins of the other side of the split. So yeah, just things like that. I try to for the historical records, document them, and just also it's interesting if people don't have a lot of time to catch up, just read the article at the end of the year. Yeah, and they're back up to speed, and they at least know what in big lines what happened.
So what happened in 2021? Why did you miss that year?
Yeah, I think it's mainly due to COVID. So for personal circumstances, it would not be that hard to write the article still if I dig up the relevant facts and things that happened. I think there was just not super much enthusiasm from my side, and with COVID, just the world in general, it seemed like Bitcoin Cash wasn't at the forefront. So I need to backfill to have a complete record. I should definitely backfill that 1 year. But people should check out the other years.
They're really good.
And then I will definitely fill in the missing year if there's
people are
a lot of
asking you. What happened to all these other years? So what's your process with writing it? Do you make notes throughout the year as to key things to happen that reflect on, or do you just get to the end of the year and then sit down and kind of reflect yourself on what happened, or do you refer to other materials somehow? How do you make this all come together? Yeah, so I have the advantage that I am pretty active both on social media, so both on Twitter, on X, and on Reddit. So when there's news, I usually try to relate to Bitcoin Cash, and I try to retweet it, or I post it on Reddit. So this forms like in broad lines already an outline, and then I try to think which projects are just missing. Maybe I have some blind spots. So which project did I not talk about? And then maybe I think, general protocols, they do things besides BCH Bull. Maybe I should look up what their highlights were on their blog or something like that. And then I try to backfill with the timeline. So I try to do it more or less with the time going chronologically. Yes. But of course, you want to group teams together. So one section is about the more Wallet Connect related things, for example, or another is about the NFT projects and the tooling for that part. So it's not, the goal isn't to be exactly chronological, but at least give, for example, with the year of CashTokens, give in broad lines what happened quite early after the upgrade, then a few months later, and then at the end of the year. So. How long does it take to do this entire process? Is it like you can get it all done in a day, or does it take you a couple of weeks to?
So I went about it a bit differently than the other ones, because this one was longer. Also, maybe because I think this year a lot happened, or in 2023 a lot happened. And I try to break it up with screenshots, so it's a bit more visual. So if you scroll through it, you can just quickly glance the big picture overview without having to read all the pages, because I think it would be something like 8 or 9 pages, the whole document. So it took me it was over multiple days, I think a week, just every evening or in the afternoon, that I would first in bullet points say what the biggest events of each month or months were, and then try to form some kind of narrative or make some kind of story out of it. Because just dry facts with dates are not interesting to anyone. So, that's a bit of the process that goes on behind the scenes.
Well, it's really interesting, I think, because it's something that Bitcoin Cash Artist has mentioned, that it's really important for a community to have a story, right? Because over time, new things happen and old things sort of get forgotten, because the human mind only has so much brain space, right? So you sort of need to compress the past without losing the lessons that were learned from any problems or issues, or even what went well along the way, right? So for instance, within the BSV split or the eCash split or the BTC split, all three of those splits, if you dig into the details, you could get into who said what to who and what kind of happened here and there and blah, 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 like, the back and forth, the changes in momentum, and you could write a whole book about any of those things easily. But the key points that it sort of gets condensed down to was one side thought this, the other side thought this, the main contention was this. Things got to a point where people didn't agree. There was a split. These guys got a bit salty because they lost the ticker and whatever. And like the way they fucked up and the reason they lost was because of this or that, right? And you kind of need to break it down to that level of resolution so that then we can have it. And then what happened with cash tokens and what happened with the CoinFlex disaster and all those things, right? So do you think much about that? Like you're saying, the 2023 article was longer than before. Are the articles just going to get longer year after year as the community accelerates, or will you need to find ways to just batch things down somehow?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think it will always be batched down once enough stuff happens, because there's only so much one person can keep track of, and also it's just not possible if a ton is happening to cover everything. And it's also meant to be a blog post, so that people can read in one sitting. So not intended to be a book. But the goal is indeed, if afterwards someone wants to write a book or something like it, an ebook, maybe something a bit shorter, that this is a great resource that they can use. Or even in a few years, if the momentum is a lot bigger and people wonder about the early days of Bitcoin Cash, I might bundle them in some kind of ebook. So that's definitely a possibility that's in my mind. So
yeah, and I think it's really important, because so much of like you writing these blog posts or me doing this show or whatever, it's the fact that it's contemporary is just so critical, because people will always, in hindsight, like you say, oh, it was obvious that X, Y, or Z happened. But when you go back and look at what was written or discussed at the time, suddenly it's like a completely different view. It's like they didn't know about whatever the future. So there might have been a lot more doubt about something you expected, or maybe everybody made an assumption about something that seemed obvious then, which in the future blew up and turned into a big issue, right? Like the FTX collapse, I think, is also just a complete classic of that, right? Crypto has always been full of scams and exchange hacks and blah, blah, blah. So everybody kind of had that background. But nevertheless, still, before the exchange blow up with FTX, everybody was like, no, this time we've got it right. These guys are really
this time is different.
Well capitalized. Yeah, exactly. Everybody was so eager to kind of believe that, or I don't know, just everyone got full with the whole Sam Altman thing. It was not Sam Altman. What's his name? Sam Bankman-Fried. Sam. Anyway, just in hindsight, I think, and then everybody writes these big articles afterwards, like how everyone should have known this, and it's like, well, people are mad when it comes to crowds, so nobody knew, or nobody really.
And there's always a few people who do warn in advance, right? Even I remember this vividly, because it was when I kind of joined cryptocurrency in 2017, and the how is it called? Bitconnect.
Yes, Bitconnect.
And it was one of the at one point it was one of the top 10 coins. So I was really like, okay, if this scam, because I followed some people, of course, who were calling it out. So if this scam can be that big, then I really need to watch what I get interested in, and I really need to do my research, because it seems like there's so many people who just get misled, or just blinded by the idea of profits, like greed. I still am amazed that like only a small number of people, or like relatively small number of people, called it out, and it could grow so big. But that's a bit the same what happened with FTX.
One of my favorite clips came out of that time, though. I unfortunately cannot remember the guy's name, but he was like, I think he was the largest crypto influencer at the time. It was right before all these podcasts started coming out, and he's sitting in his car, and he's like, "Look, you haven't lost your money. All right, maybe you lost your money."
Listen up. You didn't lose your money. Now, you have your... Technically, you kind of lost your money.
I'll see if I can find it. I'll throw it in the edit if I can.
So, I don't know that one. I don't know that one. But that's the thing. It's funny. And the same with like BitConnect, right? It has become, because it was just so meme worthy. In hindsight, again, like you said, maybe not at the time, but now that gets reposted all the time. That's so much a part of the broader crypto culture, right? Of all the different hacks and scams and so forth. Like nowadays, Mount Gox is like some historical thing that a lot of new people, they either don't know about that or they've only just heard that mentioned. They don't kind of really understand the context of it. But BitConnect, they know BitConnect, and now it's FTX, and probably in 5 years it will be FTX will be the thing that everybody's like, yeah, FTX. Everybody will have forgotten about BitConnect, or that will be an old meme that only the OGs or the boomers or whatever were interested in, right? So I guess history is always moving forward in that sense, and things that are relevant at the time really, they really change a lot as things go on. But so I just think it's important,
And one more thing, because I know you commented 2 years in a row now on the year in review, and you added some points, like some very good points. And I remember last year I was talking about the CashTokens upgrade not last year, sorry, 2 years ago now, about the CashTokens upgrade that would be coming and the research that happened. So it talked a lot about the network upgrade, the Bitcoin Cash protocol upgrades. For example, with the multiplication and the 64-bit integers, so more technical developer stuff that's relevant for smart contract developers. And at the time, it wasn't that relevant, maybe, because if you're just a normal user in a community, you wouldn't spend as much time thinking about that as a smart contract developer. But I think in the long run, it proved to be like essential building blocks to enable what we currently see with starting DeFi stuff and smart contracts and applications.
Yeah, I mean, the Bitcoin Cash community is honestly very smart about that, and except for basically SLP tokens, which I never liked. I've been on record saying that a bunch of times, and then that kind of didn't work out on. And I guess maybe smart BCH as well too. Like, we do fuck up along the way. I'm not saying we do it perfectly, but in general, the BCH community is fairly good about thinking in the big picture, right? As like, well, we get the sort of knock-on effect of we got to get this step right so we can get the next step and the next step, and things aren't just done as like the hype thing of this week, really, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the biggest challenge now, I would say, going forward, is that we can do like cool DeFi stuff, non-custodial NFT marketplaces, AMM dexes like Cauldron, NFT mints with the tooling out there. Now there's a over-collateralized stable coin in the works. So yeah, a bunch of cool things and DeFi protocols are all possible. So now it's really a matter of getting it into the hands of the users and having enough users to build momentum and profitable use cases. Because if there's not many users, it's hard for the developers also to justify putting all this time and effort into projects on this chain. So I think it was very smart to think in the long run, but now I already feel the long run is here.
The long run is here.
Yeah, so we spent a lot of time past years doing the network upgrades, and so they still, of course, developers want more capabilities to develop. So I'm talking about increasing the VM limits and stuff. But the more importantly, I would say, is you can do a ton of stuff already right now as a developer. So it's very important that that the developers that get started and the applications that get built, that they gain some kind of traction and user base and feedback and can improve and attract some kind of following, more so than only thinking in the long run. So I think, that's also very important that we see over the coming months and in this year that there's profitable applications which attract, of course, developers like we see in Ethereum. So it's a bit chicken and egg, of course. Users want applications, and the applications, the developers, they want users. So which should you focus on first? So we enabled a ton of new things for the developers. And I think now is the time for developers to develop, and some of the users, they will just come. But also networks effects is so important. So if the applications don't get any initial momentum, then developers might just go to
Right,
another
right.
chain or say, yeah, or if you see that a ton of cool stuff gets built on Bitcoin Cash, but if there's no users, then probably you don't want to try to build another cool, popular, cool thing, because you know it will probably not get popular.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. So one of the things is you've got Cashonize, which you started, I guess it's probably a little bit, maybe a year and a half old now, maybe a year old, because it was sort of being built in the run up to the CashTokens upgrade. And honestly, you've done a fantastic job, not only with the functionality, but the branding has been getting better, the UI has been getting better. It's honestly pretty easy to use for what is such a novel thing. I don't know if you have much UI background or improvement, but that's just been getting better and better. And at least in my mind, it's really important, because if you've done like Cashonize, and we've got Selene and obviously the other wallets, because when somebody new comes into the scene, they kind of will build on the foundations of what's already there. So if they come in and there's no good wallets, they're the one who has to go and do the wallets. But if the wallets are already there, then they can make an app. But if the basic apps are already there, like AMMs and DEXs and whatever, then they can do an even cooler app. And so it kind of builds on itself in that way. So talk to me a bit about what you've been doing with Cashonize and how that's going.
Yeah, so Cashonize was also, I was looking around when the tooling for CashTokens was developed, and I didn't see anyone who was like excited to start building with it right away on ChipNet. So I thought, yeah, I want to get started building with it. So this was in January of last year. And then I got started. So I was lucky that other people had built a lot of tooling already. So software libraries got upgraded, indexes got upgraded. There was this whole testing infrastructure of ChipNet, but many application developers didn't seem interested, or at least weren't publicly talking about it. So I was the first, and in the beginning, it was a very proof of concept, minimal. Like it worked, but it was really, really shitty. And then, yeah, just over time, I kept using it and kept on iterating. In the beginning, it did not have any metadata for tokens, so then I implemented the metadata standards. And that's also when other developers started to become more interested, like, oh, that's how you use the BCMR standards. Oh, that's cool. I want to do that as well. So yeah, I really liked that people were looking and encouraging what I was doing. And it has grown a lot in scope since. So now it has the Wallet Connect features that Pat helped with. So he implemented all the Wallet Connect functionality. And then Jim made his demo about an even improved version, so Cash Connect, which I merged. And now a whole rewrite of the app is happening, so it can be ported to desktop and to mobile. So yeah, the roadmap for the project has gone from kind of a demo project to then getting external help to grow it, and actually getting users. So that was also very important for me. So it's being actively used. I keep some very minimal stats, but I know there's around 150 daily unique users.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that's not too bad. So I'm happy with that, and I definitely want to grow it going forward.
That's incredible. 150 daily use. I mean, I use Cashonize. I don't necessarily use it every day, but probably every week at least. And yeah, 150 a day. That's pretty impressive. Tell me a bit more about the rewrite to Vue, and I guess that was part of, like you said, getting it onto desktop and onto mobile as well too, right? Because repurposing across platforms is a huge gain in sort of outreach and potential from a relatively small amount of work if you're just only maintaining one code base, right?
Yeah, so I actually already half a year ago or so, I tried the capacitor like tooling to port any website to an app. So I think that's similar to what Selene uses, because Callisti has helped me with that. And then I got it working on my phone. So it worked as an how do you call it, an APK?
Progressive web app. Oh, as an APK, okay. It's an installable Android file, yeah.
Yeah, so on my Android phone, it worked. But then, yeah, I wanted to do a huge rewrite, and I didn't want to do 2 code bases. So with the setup I had back then, I would have to maintain 2 code bases. And as it's just me, that wouldn't be very good in the long run. And I knew that I wanted to rewrite it anyway. So the the app grew and grew, and people added features, and it came to a point that I wasn't comfortable adding new features. Like, for example, if I wanted to enable users to select their IPFS gateway or something like that, it shouldn't be too difficult. I was feeling that the code base was a bit overwhelming. There was 2 big files, just a standard HTML file, which was almost 1,000 lines, and then one JavaScript file, which was almost 1,000 lines, and then because it wasn't using a framework, the JavaScript was saying, okay, get this element of the HTML and manipulate it in this way. So it's a bit convoluted because you don't break it up in components. And now with the viewer rewrite, it's similar to React. You can break everything up into components, and you have the component state, which is clearly separated from the component like logic and interface. So yeah, this was a huge help and proved to be much better in terms of functionality, because I already added new features to the rewritten app that the normal one does not have yet.
Yeah, but the reason I find this as well super interesting is that I've spoken many times on the show before, but it's worth highlighting, is the fact that the BCH community doesn't need to be super big for us to be like cutting edge in the industry if we do things in a smart and efficient way, right? So, for instance, how many different cryptocurrencies are there that have, let's say, even 3 really high quality custom wallet apps? Like, not many. Even a lot of the other ones that are pretty big, like Doge and Litecoin, they just sort of rely on these multi-coin wallets or different. It's not all getting built from the ground up, right? But in BCH, we haven't had to do. We've got that going, but we can have, and we don't have it yet in terms of Selene being multi-platform, but it is in the vague roadmap that I would like to one day have it be usable on the web, have it usable, downloadable as a desktop app. Obviously, we have iOS and Android, right? So we've got those. And if you're doing that same stuff and it's just all a JavaScript stack, which we then also have like with libauth and with CashScript as well too, it's even just with 3 or 4 components, you can have industry level stuff as long as those things are very, very, very high quality. And also everybody's aligning on the same tech stack, right? We don't have somebody who's coming, I want to make this different Python stuff, and they have to reinvent everything over here. And somebody wants to do this in Rust, and somebody blah, 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 right? Then it turns into a bit of a mess. I wonder, are you seeing that same thing as me, that with a relatively, there's a lot of hard work, but relative to something like the Ether ecosystem or any other open source community, there's not all that much in terms of volume in the BCH community, but it's just at a very, very high standard. And we're starting to see that pay off in those strong network effects of the high quality tools that we have.
Yeah, I think a large part of it is Jason Reisner with libauth.
Yes.
Yeah, because libauth is what CashScript uses and what mainnet.js uses. And Peitaka uses it, and Selene uses it, and Cashonize uses it. And I think Zapit uses something different, but yeah, it's fair to say that many projects have converged on this tooling because it's simply really, really good and powerful and high quality. So yeah, that's all characteristics that we want for our tech layers that we can reliably build upon.
Yeah, now you've been funding the delivery on Cashonize with a flip starter. So you had one that you'd done a while ago. And what's the sort of financial state of the project? You still got funding for the time being? Are you going to be running another flip starter? Do you not need the money because you've got some other income source? What's the status there?
Yeah, so in the beginning, Cashonize was just a minimal viable product, and it was not didn't have any funding. And I think in November I launched the Flipstarter, so 3 months ago, and I calculated that I could be working on it for almost a year on that budget. So I made a list of features that I wanted to add, and the complete rewrite was one of them, one of the big ones, and also a few key features that would come along with the rewrite, like sending all NFTs which is just a handy feature to have, and a few core other ones. So that was kind of the roadmap that I laid out, and I projected that it would be a little less than a year of work, but the funding would cover it, and it seems that I estimated that pretty well. So and then we will see again how much the users have grown and what the feedback is, and also just what kind of work needs to be done. So it depends a bit on the needs of the application as well as the scope. So I can't confidently say it yet because a lot has still needs to be delivered from the roadmap of last time.
Okay, all right. Well, sounds good to me. If you're sorted with funding until like through October, basically, so there's still another 9 months in the bank with the runway. Then, that's perfect. I had no idea what the status of all this stuff, because the BCH community has been doing a lot of flip starters, especially into technical projects. The podcast has done a few, but otherwise they're mostly technical projects, and they tend to be done in these sort of big batches that fund things for like a year, with often quite a bit of coins, and then it just kind of like drops off the radar, and then it like at some point it just crops up again like, oh, we really need another big batch of funding, guys.
I think the reason for this is also because Flipstarter just adds a little bit of overhead. So you need to write up the document, it's not always easy to think, okay, what can I deliver in what amount of time, because you haven't implemented it yet, so you don't know exactly the scope of all the features that you are promising. So it requires some overhead that if you just started working on the tech right away, that you wouldn't have to do all this kind of planning and estimating and of course convincing a bit in your Flipstarter, just laying it out cleanly what you want to accomplish. So I think it's good that we don't see like monthly Flipstarters from everybody. That would be a big mess. So I think yearly is also something I am aiming for. And it provides some also way to reflect. So, okay, what was promised the year before, and did the person deliver? And do we see that he just he has not promised, is promising to deliver all the same features again? Then you know, okay, he didn't deliver actually. So,
well, I mean, like you say, there is obviously a lot more overhead cost if there was more projects doing like you said, the tech projects tend to be a year. The podcast does one every 10 episodes, which is about 3 months. We do about three per episode. Doing a whole year of Flipstartering at the start might be a bit much in that case, because it's kind of a different, more routine type of delivery. But the reason I bring this up is because it sort of seems to me that maybe there is a way, and it will depend on someone who's going to have to actually do the work here, but maybe we could change that if we had somebody who made a sort of dashboard, a BCH funding dashboard or something, that kept track of these major projects, had their Flipstarters listed, had, when they raised money, when that was kind of going to last until so forth. It would be super interesting if you could go on there and see, okay, all these projects are like in a healthy state, and these ones are going to be coming up, because then people could look on that and they could budget themselves and think, oh, okay, I've got a bit of spare BCH that I'm willing to throw into the ecosystem. Like I think about that. I think, oh, I've got some spare BCH that I'm going to throw into the ecosystem. What am I going to put it into? And people have talked about with unspent.fi, maybe you could make a few different categories, like you could fund tech, or you could fund node devs, or you could fund marketing, and you just have one address that you just sent money into, and then it just automatically got split up into a pre-approved list of projects, right? There's a lot that I think we could do there to improve our visibility of the financial health of the ecosystem, and that would be just really useful, I think, in allocating money to the right place.
Yeah, I think another thing, something for extensions to Flipstarter is just for increasing accountability. So there's some community projects that promised and got funded, but didn't actually do a lot of work to even achieve what because not every project can be successful. Like it's hard if you do marketing to measure what the impact of your marketing is. But then if you promise a certain number of videos, or for example, there was a Netflix documentary from Colin Enstad, who I really like, but he has been totally inactive with BCH, I think since 2021. But his Flipstarter got funded, but the documentary didn't get made. So I think if people just are aware of Flipstarter projects that still have something outstanding that they could pretty reasonably, or like they should put effort into delivering, then it's also good to just point people to their accountability, because in the end, you're giving all the money upfront. So it's good if people have a proven track record. But sometimes, even then, people think they can get away with not doing the work and just taking the money. And because it's an internet community, I think it's important to have still some accountability to rely on.
Yeah, and that's been changing over time in the sense that I feel like the bar has been going up for people's Flipstarter pitches, that funders are more skeptical and need more proof of work and more sort of accountability and stuff over time. I think that's trending in the right direction, but I think we can do much better in terms of tracking that and presenting that. It's an idea that's been said several times, and I think, like for instance, on Beach House, Saeed has his tab where he has different Flipstart. That's the right idea. It hasn't all, like, nobody has made it their mission to just sit down and just fix this problem, but that's a huge opportunity in the community for somebody who is passionate about it. Because I can just see it in my mind already, the dashboard that had, last 6 months, these proposals all funded with these teams, links to what's going on with them, here's their timeline, and then like upcoming projects that are going to sort of refresh soon, and then latest pitches. And you could have a section for people who were new into the community and wanted to get started. Maybe they were just doing a small flip starter to try and build some reputation, and you could document who'd done what. Like, it would be, I'm sure we'll get something like that eventually. I'll make it if nobody else does, but just there's only so many problems you can fight at once, right?
I think it might have been mentioned on the podcast before, but I'm just throwing the idea out there if it hasn't. What about, something where the money that's going to the Flipstarter gets essentially locked up, and each deliverable has a portion of those locked funds. When someone says, I've delivered the deliverable, then the donators go, yes, this is delivered or not. If after a certain amount of time it hasn't been delivered, that deliverable
gets refunded.
Gets refunded. I would love to see something like that.
That would be amazing. And it's so obviously doable with cash tokens. It would be like everybody pays into the Flipstarter, everybody gets, 5 deliverable tokens for their contribution or whatever. And then at each stage, it's like the person needs to get, 3 or 4 tokens sent in to unlock the next stage, which gives them another batch of money. And if at some point the funders sort of revolt and are like, you're not living up to it, they can all like burn their tokens or send it to a provable address that's like they're not delivering, and then it cashes them back out. Like, there's so much that can be done with that. I don't know. It's just a huge opportunity for somebody is interested. Anybody in the community can do that as well. I mean, it would help if you were a developer, but you don't need to be. You could team up with somebody, but if you had the vision and the accountability to actually, FlipHub is the perfect name for it, because there's GitHub, and if you had FlipHub, it'd be amazing.
Expo in the chat popping off with the suggestion. He's 100% that's the way we learned in Cosmos. That's the best way to do it. Do it.
Okay, all right. Well, I look forward to seeing FlipHub MVP startup. Right, so that's not the only project you've been on, Matthew. You're a busy guy. You've also wanted to chat a little bit about the Reapers and also Cash Ninjas as well, to the NFT projects that you've been involved in. I guess that's an example of the Cash Tokens infrastructure at work and rapidly improving. We talked to Itachi and Josh on the show as well about the ninjas, but when it comes to the Reapers and ninjas, what's the latest there?
Yeah, so we're still aiming to make, for our progress that we set, the roadmap that we set out on the beginning. So we're making steady progress on that. And also, just with the Flipstarter, one thing I would like to contrast is, so for the Cash Ninjas, we built a lot of tooling, open source tooling, but we decided not to do a Flipstarter or but do it in more of an entrepreneurial way, where we actually just made a collection ourselves. And I think it's important that Flipstarter doesn't become the only way for people to get funded to work on BCH stuff, but that there's only also an entrepreneurial spirit. So people just try to come up with projects. And for example, this then was an NFT collection where we open sourced all the tooling for other projects. And we know that there's currently 2 in the works, which are using our NFT tooling to make CashTokens collections. So they will probably announce it themselves in the coming months. So it's cool to see our tooling being used, but also not everything needs to be a flip starter. And for example, Paytaka did the BitCuts, and with the Cash Ninjas, we did NFTs also to finance our work on the tooling. So there doesn't always need to be a hard line. And sometimes just supporting a project like the Cash Ninjas or the BitCuts can be a way of supporting development. So I think also that's an important point to make, that we don't want a culture where everybody tries to do just flip starters, and because there's only so much, of course, funders and pledgers for these flip starters. You also want a culture where there's actually profitable businesses, because these will be sustainable on the long term. Businesses with users who can grow in scope and deliver on projects, and they also are very accountable, of course, to those users, and to actually make them happy and retain the same profits. So yeah, that's something that we had as a important value when starting the Cash Ninjas project, and we wanted to help as much as possible. So we did the tooling, which is all open source, and we also want to bootstrap the CashTokens ecosystem. So we said we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I think the expression goes. So you have a lot of SBCH users who were angry and disenfranchised or disappointed that their NFTs, in this case the Reapers, the previous project of Itashu and Josh, that they were kind of useless or on a dead chain. They were stuck. So we said, okay, we can make a bridge. We can make the existing holders happy because they can transition in a one way from the SBCH, a kind of dead chain now with no ecosystem, to CashTokens. And then for the CashTokens ecosystem, this will be great because there's a bunch of new users who might otherwise not have jumped in, because SBCH and Bitcoin Cash, although they are related, the communities were very different. So this way we help both kind of the CashTokens ecosystem with new users who are excited they got their free or their ported over NFT, and they might try out TapSwap, or they might to sell them or buy more, or just check out the Cash Ninjas, for example. And then, of course, the Reapers holders, they are happy because, they got their Reapers in a usable state again. So I think both ecosystems would benefit from this. And of course, we want to open source also the tools we make for this bridge, this one-way bridge. So that's on our roadmap currently. And I can't give an exact date because developing the bridge has been a bit more difficult than we initially planned. But yeah, we're definitely planning on making it or on finishing it rather soon.
No, that's great to hear. And I want to reinforce, I guess you're right that the Flipstart is not the only way, that it's one good tool to have, but it's not the only thing we need. Like Bliss, for instance, we've got some sponsors in the background, and then we have the ticket sales as well too, and various other things. There's no Bliss Flipstarter. So it's important that the ecosystem has a variety of different financial methods, and each will sort of serve a different niche. But it's great to hear that we're keeping the community momentum rolling, from that. Well, are there many other projects on Smart BCH even left that need to migrate? Like when you talk about making this bridge and open sourcing it, couldn't you even just do it manually? Couldn't you just say, here's the Telegram, write in, burn your token, we'll mint with new cash tokens, and maybe it would be a bit of a hassle while you were doing it, but you only need to do it once, and then.
Yeah, the bridge is essentially that in an automated way, so that people can burn, for example, 100 NFTs at once, and that they get automatically minted on the other side. And so it won't be SBCH specific. The tool would work for any EVM chain that wants to migrate to cash tokens.
Wow.
But the bridge is one way, so that's also important. Yeah,
We're
so-
letting you in, but not out, guys. It's
exactly.
a one-way door. We've made it. Come in. It's very welcome to come in, but you cannot leave. It's locked. The prison door locked behind you. Cash tokens.
Yeah, other people are free, of course, to try and develop two-way bridges, but it's also more complex. So, and for our use case with the Reapers, we just need a one-way bridge. So that's what we're working on.
And any EVM chain. I hadn't put that together actually. So that sounds great then, because as BCH grows in prominence, you'll have people from all these other scenes like ETH or I don't know, whatever, any other Avalanche, whatever, that are kind of like, wow, Cash Tokens is kicking off. Let's get us a bit involved. And that's a pretty strong pitch to them. If you can say, not only is it we've got our own tooling and things are going great, but we've already built you some migration tools. So if you want to be involved, then you're not starting, everything again over from zero. That's very, very cool. I like that a lot.
For SBCH specifically, it's true that there's not too many projects waiting anymore to transition to cash tokens, because a whole bunch did already transition. For example, to Doge chain. Apparently, that was in community somewhat related to Smart Bitcoin Cash. So I haven't investigated it at all, but many NFT projects are now on Smart BCH have gone multi-chain, so both to AVAX or to these other lesser-known EVM chains. So this way you can also see that there's a bit of a divide in the community, but also that the ecosystems are pretty fragile. Just like with SLP, there weren't too many projects jumping to migrate to cash tokens still, because many, with all the infrastructure winding down, many SLP projects didn't make it until the cash tokens actually arrived, which I think is unfortunate. But
no, it is. It's an interesting point though, which is that once you get momentum going, you kind of need to keep it going, and that's where it comes to, like you said in the past, if you get the foundation right, then you're in such a strong position for things to continue. But if it's a bit shaky there and things kind of slow down a little bit, then time moves on, people are busy, and boom, there's in crypto, you're competing with so many other chains. They're not hanging around. So if you're not keeping pace with the competition, if things are sort of stagnating, bam, that's it. The activity just leaves. And maybe if you don't have a Titanic network effect, it's just not coming back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, super, super interesting thing for us to, learn as the crypto ecosystem develops. I wonder if over time things will become more fragmented and there'll be less switching, or whether it will become just more people make bridges and things will become more fluid. Maybe users will become more tolerant to the back ends switching out, because their interface with the project might just be the project people in Telegram or whatever. And as long as that's the same, then maybe they don't care, right? It's quite interesting. Okay, you talked it. Oh, go on.
One last thing I would also love to see is an ordinals bridge. Like if we can convince some of the disenfranchised BTC people to come to BCH and try out cash tokens. So I think a one-way bridge, hopefully with ordinals on BTC, that could be really interesting. So that's one thing that's on my mind. If there would be, like, of course you need the projects first, and but if we catch on and there's demand, that would be definitely super interesting.
Yeah, no, that's well, and especially seeing as a lot of the ordinal stuff is built by like ex-BSV migrants, it would be kind of full circle if they then thought, oh, let's get back into BCH. So there would be need to be a pretty strong sales pitch there, but follow the money. I kind of feel like if our ecosystem is kicking off, if the price is rising, if the hype is there, somebody will do it, right? So in October, you gave this talk at the XEC meetup, ECC, I guess, 2023, and you talked about the future of cash tokens at that time. This was a few months ago. Contract templates, cash script libraries, SBCH and SLP token bridging, like we were just talking about, and catching up to ETH tooling, docs and tutorials. How are we doing on those things so far, do you think? And what about the next 9 months? What do you expect to see from the cash tokens ecosystem?
Yeah, so on the first point with the contract templates, we made a lot more progress than I anticipated, because James Cash Connect was so good and got merged, and then the BCH Guru platform already using it for their beta. So for the contract templates, it's actually looking surprisingly good, and other wallets are also interested in using this contract templates. But then it jumps to the last point already: the tooling, documentation, and tutorials. So currently for the Cash Connect, because it's in pre-alpha, there is no good tooling yet, no documentation, and no tutorials. So I think that those two are somewhat related, because they are the most interfacing with the users, like we talked about before, the two tabs. So these two things are kind of related in my mind: the contract templates, so that users know that they can actually read the template before they press sign. So this would be a great achievement if we can get to that point. So that also requires some education. And then the cash script stuff, we're working on. Roscoe and I are working on it. So it will be still out a bit further, because currently we are prioritizing the debugging tools, which we have found is actually very, very important, because as soon as people start writing smart contracts, they run into bugs or things that don't work. So they want to debug, but the debug tools were, to say it plainly, were very bad. So we're improving those first, and Pat from Mainnet.js has helped us a ton with that. So he gave us the head start by doing the hard work, and now we're finishing up and making sure it works in all cases. So just doing some polishing. So that's the state of CashScript. And then the bridging, that's mainly what the Reapers is about. So we hope if the Reapers bridge is a success, then maybe it can be used by others. But if it doesn't go as well as hoped, then maybe bridging won't be as important. So I think we can kind of try it out and see, and then others will learn from our attempt.
And as for the next 9 months, what do you think we're going to see? So we're doing okay on contract templates, the tooling is catching up and so forth. Do you think we're going to get onto even more advanced stuff? Like for me, prediction markets is a huge one that is just wide open for anyone to do, but because it's kind of several layers deep, you already need the wallets there, you already need the infrastructure there, you already need a fair amount of documentation, you probably already need like Cauldron and stuff so that you have swapping infrastructure there, or other stuff. Like what do you see in the next 9 months or so or maybe the rest of 2024 in terms of the CashTokens ecosystem?
So I think prediction markets will still be off for a few more years, unfortunately, but because it also takes, I think it would take a team, especially if you want to do it as a sidechain, because then you need validators. Again, you essentially need to make full nodes and a bridging system. So the barrier to entry is very high. But with things that we can see over the coming year, I think one thing that might be very important is with the upcoming DeFi we see. First, we see the NFT marketplace, then the AMM DEXs. What we haven't seen really yet is ways to earn yield. And I think that's super important. If we look at the Ethereum ecosystem, people really want their coins to give them some yield, so they can earn in a more passive way, that they can just select which DeFi protocol or project that they trust, provide some liquidity, and that this liquidity gets used in some way. Maybe it's providing liquidity for a swap, or maybe it's the collateral for a stable coin, or maybe it's even something else entirely. But I think this could get the big money involved, whereas now with TapSwap and Cauldron, I feel that the total value locked is very tiny. So I think Cauldron, if you only count the BCH, there's like 15K USD, which is good for a starting ecosystem, but it's still very tiny. And the same for TapSwap. So if you would compare TapSwap to OpenSea or something like that, you see the volume is very tiny. But I think with kind of yield protocols, you will see much bigger amounts of BCH being involved if they work, of course, at scale. So if there's enough demand for the liquidity pairs or for the stablecoin, then you can see people locking up large amounts of money. And of course, the trust will have to grow the templates. So it's a bit related with the Wallet Connect stuff and the contract templates. But if they prove to be mature and there are not too many like rugs and scams and hacks and bugs, things like that. So if we prove that we can build some mature projects and apps for users, then I think DeFi and the concept of yield will become popular in the next year.
Okay, all right, cool. And you think we're sort of on the right track for that? We just need to, like you say, maintain high community awareness that as long as we don't screw things up with people getting a load of people getting burnt one way or another, then that's fine. Like we don't need to make any sort of change in attitude. We just need to keep doing things the way we're doing, from your point of view.
One thing I feel we're kind of missing in a big way is still hype. So if I just look up on X, Twitter, in the search bar, just CashTokens, or on YouTube, you see that there's not too much content, not too many people talking about it yet. So I think this will be really a grassroots effort. And I want to do a bit more in the coming year to start a discussion and garner encourage the interest of people. So I think that's a thing we need to work on just as a community, that we encourage the existing projects and builders and just share some excitement, because sharing excitement is free, but it attracts new people. So just being positive and enthusiastic about stuff is a good vibe, and is also what other people want to join.
Yeah, so speaking of that, we've got community comment of the week, possibly the best community comment I think we have ever had on this show. It comes from David Shattuck, who is the Fifth of Gaming creator, and we had on episode 94 from memory. Anyway, he visited St. Kitts, and his thread here, he said, "I heard there was a lot of vendors on St. Kitts accepting Bitcoin Cash for payments, so I popped in to see for myself. A thread of my BCH adventures today," and he's got a photo of him. He's wearing a nice Bitcoin Cash Wizards shirt from helpme.cash and a cowboy hat, looking like a baller. He's there with his fiance, who looks like she's having a pretty good time too. And they found this local rum tasting Bitcoin Cash accepted here sign at the port in St. Kitts. But he made this thread, which got 22,000 views on X, got shared around a bunch. It's an amazing thread as he just walks around. He bought all kinds of stuff. He bought shot glasses. He bought rum and wine. He bought souvenirs and T-shirts. He got food, and then at the end he got his girl a emerald necklace as well too, and he's got videos of him paying at all the terminals and talking to the shop owners, and like it really just comes through in the way he wrote. So he wrote, "I was expecting to be driving all over the island, following leads and asking for directions to these alleged vendors, but they were everywhere. Even the local KFC had a BCH sticker on it. Now, let's be fair here. At least half of these places with stickers and signs told me they don't actually accept BCH anymore. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to check the KFC. I just snapped the pic on the way by. But let's be fair in the other direction too. It was trivially easy to find vendors who are accepting it for payments. My goal on the island today was to find as many of those vendors as possible and buy stuff from them." And then he was onboarding people to Celine, and this is just so hype. When I saw it, I was like, this is exactly it. This is us succeeding at the P2P Cash mission. And it was just so interesting that he had heard, people saying in St. Kitts there's lots of adoption and stuff, and then he got there, obviously with his expectations, fairly moderated, and was like, "Wow, it is actually kicking off. It's real," which was just so good. It brought such a big smile to my face. So huge shout out to David, and I think this is the kind of thing, right, that adds that hype and interest. This got reshared by loads of people, not just in the BCH community, but even other crypto communities were impressed by this, right?
Yeah, I need to check out the full thread. So loving the vibe, but I haven't. I will have to see for myself what all the pictures look like, because it sounds lovely, like the rum, shot glasses, lunch. And
you haven't been to St. Kitts, right?
No,
you weren't there for the BCH 22. So yeah,
I wish I was. missed out.
Well, that's it. Now you're correcting that by showing up to Bliss, right? But it's just funny because this kind of thing, when you see it, I mean, I've been there myself and seen it, so it didn't catch me off guard in that way. But just the fact that he was so enthusiastic and so happy in documenting it, just like that passion was just oozing out of this entire thing. And I think it really does impress people when it's real. Crypto has so much hype, and yeah, we're going to be the economy of the future, but it's ultimately just a few people running these like scams from their laptops or whatever. Once it's actually like, wow, we have merchant adoption, people are transacting peer-to-peer, it's all non-custodial, it all just works. Even the people who are involved who don't really know what's going on, you can just show them, and in 2 minutes that it's working, right? I just loved everything about this. And obviously, in the future, once we can get this going at multiple places around the world, I can just see it. Like, this just blows away any argument from any other crypto. But what about any argument? It's like, just look at the proof. The proof is in the pudding right there, Hopefully we can do... Bliss will not be exactly the same necessarily, because it's not that concentrated merchant adoption like St. Kitts. But at the very least, I'm hoping, once we get everybody together, you can still do a lot of peer-to-peer transacting and finding some local merchants and stuff. Anyway, that was just amazing.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I will bring my BCH.
Now we're building hype. Okay, a couple other bits of news that we can just quickly touch on. Selene Wallet has finally shipped its major update that Khaleesi and I have been promising for a long time. Finally got that out. There has been some users who've had some minor issues here and there, nothing we haven't been able to sort out. If you have those, obviously you can come in the Telegram and talk to us about it. But in most cases, if you just make sure you have your wallet seed, you uninstall, reinstall, and re-import, then that's fine. Make sure to use the additional options tab and pick the 0.0 derivation path if you've got an older Selene wallet, because we have updated onto the new derivation path. But we just got to fix that now so that when we have 3 million users, we don't have this same problem. CNBC put out a video called How Bitcoin Lost by Winning, which got 66,000 YouTube views and loads more in other places, talking about how Bitcoin BTC has been captured, essentially, and that it's not really a viable currency, and just Wall Street has now got them with the ETFs and stuff. So it was fascinating to see what the BCH community has been saying forever has now just become the mainstream perception of BTC. Mm-hmm. And finally, Jonald Fuchball, the Electron Cash maintainer, popped up on Reddit to announce that reusable payment addresses, so you could just have one QR code and every time it would just generate fresh addresses to preserve everyone's privacy and also make the UI much easier for having different addresses, is now back sort of on the menu, and he's working on that, which has been kind of under wraps or just dormant for quite a long time. So from these news stories, what do you make of these? Anything you want to say about any of this?
Yeah, I missed Jonald Fuchball's announcement. And I also need to check out the CNBC. I've seen it come on my feed, but I didn't take the time. So can you maybe do a quick summary? So just
I didn't even watch the whole thing myself, honestly. What I watched was BCash made an amazing 1 minute cut down. It's a 10-minute thing where, but basically they're just saying, it's this lady as well, Deirdre, I think her name is, who's the presenter, and she's wearing a green dress, which I think is probably coincidental, but it's just kind of is nice for the BCH community. And she's just sitting at the desk because there's been so much hype about the ETFs, right? And Bitcoin is finally here and it's grown up. But the whole tone of her piece is like, even though the BTC community are celebrating, Bitcoin has lost the way. It's no longer the original vision of a decentralized currency that is traded among people. It was supposed to be changing the system, but instead it's been absorbed into it. And she just says a lot of that stuff. And then BCash made an edit of that with some really ominous music to it as well too, which is just super cool. So but it's just such a watershed thing, because it's like for a long time the narrative has now turned against the BTC people themselves, right? Is that they were trying to be like, yeah, we're kind of a peer-to-peer currency and blah blah blah, but Lightning Network and all that stuff, it hasn't worked, and the world has moved on, right? You only have so long if you're trying to say something for it to come true. Otherwise, the rest of the world just goes, "What are you doing?" And like, nobody in the BCH community is involved in this CNBC report, but it's exactly what we've been saying the whole time, and that's just now become mainstream, right?
Yeah, definitely. And to expand on this point, I also think we see this with Lightning. So as you talked on the other podcast episodes, more and more people, even in BTC, acknowledge that Lightning hasn't worked out at all. He says, so yeah, if you got the truth on your side, that's always, in the long run, something people can notice, or at least they will acknowledge the same points that you made years ago. So
yes, lies have speed, but truth has endurance. That's whoever said that in somebody said that in one of the comments. I think it was Queen Ofuka, but maybe it was somebody else said that in one of the comments of the Bitcoin Cash podcast videos, and I think that's now becoming just a bit of a phrase that I keep going back to. Lies have speed, but truth has endurance. So speaking of that, obviously I've been trying not to do too much drama and shitting on the BTC people, and so it's not really necessary at this point. Like you say, reality is falling apart, but we just had an outrageously egregious example from this week that I wanted to get on the show, because for anybody new to the Bitcoin Cash community, or anybody looking back in history, like we talked about before, it's so critical to understand how much rewriting of the truth happens by the people who are on the wrong side of it, right? So this is a clip here of Pete Rizzo, who is this supposed documenting Bitcoin journalist on the BTC side, and he was on What Bitcoin Did, Peter McCormack's podcast, and he's just we've got a little 3.5 minute clip here of him giving a bit of a retrospective on the big blockers and on Bitcoin Cash and so forth. And let's have a listen to what he said, and then talk about whether or not that's accurate, because it's very, very interesting.
Where did the last monoculture of Bitcoin go wrong? And I use the word monoculture because I think, when we have these big price peaks, you really see the Bitcoin culture consolidate, right? Like now we're in a bottom, right? We're in a down. Maybe some people think a bull market's back. And because of that, we see a tremendous diffusion of narratives, right? There's many narratives competing. And eventually, I think when the price comes back and we're at all-time highs, we'll have another monoculture. That monoculture exists to basically explain to people outside of Bitcoin what's going on. And the upside of the monoculture is you have a very convenient way to explain Bitcoin. That helps onboard a lot of people. The downside of the monoculture is that we've seen that these monocultures tend to break. We tend to learn new things about Bitcoin, and those new things over time, people have a difficult time accepting that. So one of the analogies that gets thrown a lot with the ordinals debate is the big blockers. Who are the new big blockers? Is it the anti-ordinals people, or is it the pro-ordinals people? And I would invite people who are listening to consider, like, the problem with the big blockers was not that they supported bigger blocks. Like, really, we actually have to get that through people's head. And the end result of the block size war was that the winning faction raised the block size. Let's just sit with that. The winning side of the block size wars enacted a consensus block size increase. Okay.
Not exactly true.
That's 100% what happened.
Otherwise, you wouldn't have. It was a block weight increase. But it was a block weight increase, which required no hard fork.
But that's what I mean. And then the problem with the big blockers is that they had a very ideological definition of what they thought Bitcoin should be. They thought it must be a P2P digital cash.
Yeah.
And they were unwilling to accept any innovation that could give them what they wanted in a different way. And this is why I'm saying the rejection of SegWit and the rejection of ordinals is very similar. With SegWit, you had someone who, in the development community, who had a very beautiful and original idea. It was that we could increase the amount of information that is stored in a block size increased, without a hard fork. And ultimately, that was so unpalatable to the other side that they became a dogmatic group of people who were unwilling to accept an alternative solution to their own problem. So all this is to say is you can make your own conclusion about who you think on this side fits that definition. But the problem with the big blocker is really that they were unable to accept new information and they were unable to deviate from their dogmatic view about what Bitcoin should be. And I think that as we think about how Bitcoin develops and we think about these different monocultures, personally, I think we need to we need to find a way for people joining Bitcoin to have more flexible mental models. The fact that we even might have a group within Bitcoin now that is so kind of focused on certain memes, and those memes are they're so attached to those being what Bitcoin is, means that we've created a similar problem that we've had in the past. And the end result of that problem that we've had in the past is that Bitcoin forked. Bitcoin had a tremendous split in which a lot of people who use Bitcoin are now somewhere else, right? Listening to different podcasts, in a whole different reality, in which they think completely different things about Bitcoin. I mean all this to say that nobody right now is arguing for an increase in the size of blocks, right? And that's not happening. No faction is. But there is a certain group of people, I think, who haven't responded to this new information. They haven't thought very critically about why there might be good arguments that we should support these kind of things that historically we haven't supported.
So you can hear here, this is just endless amounts of just completely rewriting the truth, right? So he starts off with saying the problem with the big blockers was not that they support a bigger block. That's an absolute complete lie. The big blocks was against consensus. It was technically unfeasible. It was dangerous. It was too early. It was serving corporate interests. All these arguments that they had have been completely swept aside. In fact, there's still people who make those arguments on the BTC side today, and yet he's here busy trying to rewrite the narrative that it wasn't even really about the bigger blocks. Then he goes on to segue as a block size increase. That's another complete lie. And Peter McCormack even calls him out for it, which shows how ridiculous it is. Back then, it was just this 2x quick fix for Lightning Network, which will solve scaling. It's not a block size increase because those are dangerous. Now, it's supposedly this 4 megabyte increase, and everybody knows that Lightning Network sucks, but they didn't know that then, even though we did, and now we've been vindicated. He says the big blockers were too dogmatic, which is, again, an inversion of the reality, right? Back in the day, they were saying BTC is the real Bitcoin, and if we have big blocks, that will turn the cash, it will fuck it up because it'll be a centralized custodial PayPal. Now it's the other way around. Now they acknowledge that the big blockers were actually right. They were the ones who stuck with peer-to-peer cash. And but the fact that we have is now rebranded as a bad thing, where we just weren't innovative and weren't able to discover these new use cases for Bitcoin. And of course, ETF and Lightning Network custodians are now on their side, not the PayPal on our side that they predicted. There's just, it goes on and on and on. He says that the big blockers were unable to accept new information, even though there was the 20 megabyte proposal, 8 megabyte, 248, SegWit 2x. Every stage, the big blockers were adjusting and not, it's lies, right?
I want to jump in on that last point. So he tries to paint it like the BTC side was trying to compromise, but the big blockers were always unreasonable, not accepting any form of compromise, except when you look at the actual history. It's nothing else than trying compromises from the big blockers to the point of SegWit 2x, which was a horrible proposal. But then even then there was the bait and switch, so the 2x never happened, only the SegWit part. So to say that the Bitcoin Cash side or the on-chain scaling side was unwilling to compromise is just a total lie. And I think it's easy to see that it was not supported by the history. Even people like Adam Beck said 248 megabytes. You can easily dig up those tweets and it will shatter the narrative that we just heard. And one more point is, to me, his new narrative doesn't even make sense. He says the problem with big blockers was not the block size increase, but SegWit was a block size increase, so block size increases are quite good. But then nobody in ordinals or against ordinals is proposing a block size increase because they are quite bad. So what do you want people to believe now? Block size increases like a bad, good, just something that happened once but should never happen again? Like, quite confused in my opinion.
But that's why it's so crazy, because I don't think that he genuinely understands that he is just lying and rewriting history. Like, I think he genuinely believes what he is saying, right? In his own mind, he has come to this quote unquote new understanding, or he's just forgotten or buried all of that stuff in the past somewhere in his, people are very changeable. This is why we're talking about history on this show, right? They rewrite the past. They think in hindsight something was obvious or different than it was at the time, and that gets forgotten and lost unless you go back to those foundations, right? Like he says, oh, the big blockers rejected a working solution that would get them what they wanted. That's completely wrong as well too. SegWit was known to be a poison pill in the big blocker community. It was an obvious indicator that they'd been captured. It didn't fix the scaling. It doesn't, fix the actual problem with the culture, with the social layer. It had bad side effects in that it then led on to the ordinal stuff, which they now all hate, even though, like, it's just how many layers of lies he's saying. But it's like, I don't think he's even doing it intentionally. The one bright spot in the entire thing is at the end, where he says that the, big blockers are now in their own reality, which is actually true. In the past, we were the scammers and attackers and the corporate shills and, just dogpiled on at every opportunity. But now enough time has gone by and BCH has made enough progress and been resilient enough that they have no choice but to acknowledge it as legitimate. And just suddenly, instead of being scammers and attackers, we were just the ones who were focused on the original peer-to-peer cash mission, right? It's crazy. So we are in a different reality. If you're listening to this show and you're listening to what Bitcoin did, there's two different versions of history going on. And it's just crazy that he can't understand that he's in the fake narrative rewriting side and his so-called other reality just is the truth, right? It's unreal. I don't know.
Yeah, I think his point about the monoculture in Bitcoin, as he calls it, does have something to it, because I assume he doesn't mention it explicitly, but I assume it's talking about the Lightning Network, how Lightning is the layer 2 that will scale to the whole world, was the kind of narrative for people
digital gold.
Yes. Yeah, and the people who still believed in peer-to-peer cash, they said, oh, Lightning is going to scale and is way better than on-chain scaling. And so I think with the monoculture thing is kind of admitting, well, yeah, Lightning is kind of collapsing, and this new thing that we didn't plan for, ordinals, is now suddenly big. So how does our culture adjust? And well, yeah, it adjusts pretty badly, with many people denying that Lightning has any problems at all, and not willing, because even the Lightning developers, they keep asking for a new soft fork. They want something called L2, or they want something called LN Enhance, or Covenant. So they want new soft forks to make their Lightning implementation much better, because the current way of hash time-locked contracts, which were enabled by SegWit, they ended up realizing that it doesn't work properly and it doesn't scale. So they tried the whole SegWit thing to shoehorn in many different ideas, with fixing malleability and then enabling Lightning and doing a weird block size weight increase. But yeah, I think that's now all the narratives don't make sense anymore, and the developers want something new. So there's the community in BTC, is really at a kind of crossroads, because people are discontent, and the developers, even in Lightning, they are they can't make Lightning work.
But what he's saying about the monoculture is basically that when the price is going up, suddenly everybody's best friends, because everybody's getting rich, and that's what happened. Even though they won the block size war and they got to keep the branding, they got to keep the ticker, they got to keep the exchange liquidity. They had this vision of Lightning. The price went up, everybody was best friends. And then the same thing again in the 2020 and 2021 thing. Everybody was hype, everyone's getting rich. Suddenly it's all great. But now the situation is different, which is that even with ETFs, even with, this, that, and the other, adoption has stalled out and the price is not mooning. I'm constantly feeling better every day about my predictions that maybe the bull run would kind of not materialize as everyone had expected. Maybe BTC doesn't even hit its all-time highs. So now, without that regular injection of we're all getting rich that everybody needed, the infighting has started, and it's over ordinals, right? Is that a good or a bad thing? Of course, he's right that if BTC went to all-time highs again, for at least a little while, everyone would be on the same page. Yeah, we're all good, ordinals, or we're all happy together. But as soon as you're not getting those price pumps, which is what their entire thing is built on, then it just turns into fractious division and fighting. And in his world, they're discovering, quote unquote, new narratives every time, as if Bitcoin is this emergent phenomenon.
I think with that part is also, besides ordinals, he's also talking about the governance idea, because in the technical community, many people in BTC acknowledge that covenants are interesting, but some are super scared about recursive covenants, thinking they will lead to some kind of disaster scenario, even though we've had them on BCH and nothing but cool use cases have come out of them. So I think it's this thing with Lightning collapsing, and then the people behind the covenants proposal, they have ideas for different layer 2s, and some of them make more sense even than Lightning. So if you want to switch from Lightning or the current implementation to either a better version of Lightning or to a different layer 2, you need some kind of soft forks, but then this gets huge pushback. So for me, it's super unclear what the next Bitcoin upgrade will be. So kind of Schnorr signatures and Taproot, you could see it coming from a bit away, so maybe a year in advance. At least the Schnorr signatures we talked about a long time ago. But now with the next upgrade, it's very unclear if anything can get consensus from the small group of people actually controlling the Bitcoin core repo.
Yeah. And I mean, just one final last point about all this rewriting of history is also there's what is said, which was mostly lies and propaganda, whether deliberately or not, but there's also what is not said, which is where is his mention in his retelling of the problems with the big blockers? Where is all the censorship and narrative control that happened and that the big blockers were protesting about then and still today? Where is the recognition that we predicted that Lightning Network was going to fail, that custodians were going to take over, that stalled momentum would halt all of the organic, grassroots adoption, which, like we saw with the same kids thing, is still, we've preserved that in BCH, but it could have been fucking everywhere if it had all just stayed on the right track, with a huge network effect from the start. Where is his acknowledgement that these big blockers in their so-called other reality, that we didn't just get there randomly? It's because we've been told we're scammers and attacked and lied about over and over and over and over and over again for years. None of this is anywhere to be found in his story of what happened. So I just think it's absolutely insane that this guy is, such a Bitcoin historian, but clearly his grasp on reality is just tenuously rewritten by whatever serves him in the moment. And we just got to have this down in the historical record for people to look back at anytime they want. Because if you're new to Bitcoin Cash, welcome to the ride, because this is exactly what happens every year, every 2 years. There's a fresh set of lies and propaganda that gets cooked up to avoid the fact that from the start, Bitcoin was a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. As soon as you just lie about that, there's endless amounts of bullshit you need to keep coming up with to avoid all that. All right, I had to get that out of my system. That is just so, I can't believe it's still going on.
Rightly.
I'm glad it's there. I'm glad we've got it. Okay, last slide. Message to the community. What does the Bitcoin Cash community need to hear, Matthew? What 2024, got 11 months left. What do we need to hear?
Yeah, so I think I touched upon the enthusiasm. So enthusiasm is free and positive vibes, and so I hope to see that more in the community, so that just the general cash tokens developments get talked about, projects shared, people try out stuff, maybe require some time investments. But besides that, I really want to encourage builders, because you have to fuel a cycle somehow. And I think we can start a lot with the builders. So now the good tooling is there. There's the possibilities with cash tokens are immense. So there's real opportunity there to make a cool project. Just like I didn't know how to code. I became self-taught with coding, and then started a demo wallet with CashTokens, which became Cashonize, and now I am funded to work on it. There is many opportunities like it, just laying around, waiting for people. People have to work hard to materialize the opportunities into something that can have a big impact on their life. Like working on this stuff is it's really empowering also, because you get to work on a vision you believe in. It's a powerful form of critique to actually build something, build your own vision, and help the vision materialize. So that's what I want people to know, that it's possible to get started. I made some tutorial videos, so I hope that those can help in some extent, or that people can check out the CashCrypt documentation, maybe try out with the playground, an example smart contract, and you never know, maybe that's the start of a whole journey, learning how to develop. And not everybody needs to become a developer, but for the people interested, there's big opportunities, and you can really learn a ton. For example, over the course of half a year or a year, you can really acquire new skills that you wouldn't have believed at the beginning what you would be able to end up doing. So that's also why I like about talking about Cashonize, that it didn't even exist 1.5 years ago, and now it's funded, and talking about different platforms and rewriting it with in a better language with streamlined code. So this is all things I learned along the way. So if I knew all this from the beginning, things would have been a bit different, but there's a lot of value in learning along the way. And so that's my message of encouragement that I want to share with everybody.
Yeah, that's it. Sometimes you just got to zoom out and you just keep plugging away at it. Even if on any given day, just a small step forward, that's all you need to make. And then when you look back 1.5 years, by the way, the podcast has just passed its 3rd birthday. It was on the 23rd of January. So that's the same thing, you know, any given day, it's just prepping up the next episode, talking to new guests, figuring out a different way that we can present the show or improve the quality, or promoting it a different way, or whatever. And now here we are, you know, get over 1,000 audio downloads a month, and that's beside all the YouTube and the Twitch stuff. And you know, it all builds up if you just keep sticking away at it every single day. Okay, supporter appreciation. Thank you as always to our donators. Thank you to our patrons, Ricky HP and Digital Checo. Thank you to our sponsors, General Protocols. Check out bchbull.com. The flip starter from 96 to 105 is now done. So we've delivered all those episodes. I will probably be doing another one soon for 106 to 115, I guess. So everybody can look out for that, but I haven't had time to do that yet. And the reason I haven't is because I promised the sunrise video for Marcelo, and I've been working on that this week. That's about 85% done. So I will get that out and delivered as promised before pitching my next flip starter. So that's keep your eyes peeled for that, because we'll have that coming, a bit of bonus content, and then the new flip starter. Thank you, everybody, for watching. You can check out bitcoincashpodcast.com for the start guide, FAQs, and links. If you're new to the show, check out episode 85. You can try Selene Wallet, which has now been upgraded and is better than ever, at selene.cash. And we have our final shout-outs. Matthew, where can people find more of you? And is there anything else you want to give a special shout-out to?
On Twitter, so on X, people can follow me, or can follow Cashonize for the updates related to it. Special shout out. I want to do a shout out to you and to the other organizers of the Bliss conference, because I'm really excited to go there. Just genuinely excited to meet people in real person, because there's people who I've worked with on project that I haven't met. So that will be a great opportunity to meet them in real life, and also just to spend BCH. So I hope to also meet some viewers or listeners of the podcast. Come and say hi in
Well. That's it. Bliss.cash, www.bliss.cash. Get a ticket. You're pretty tall, right? I get the feeling you're pretty tall, so you might be like towering over.
I think people will see me.
All right, high visibility. Jet, any shout outs for the show?
Not this time, no.
Not this time. Okay, no. And my shout out goes to everyone in the chat. Big V, Killian, Tombstone, Sally, Saeed, a few people have been chatting away in the Twitch chat as well, and probably on other platforms, but I haven't followed it all. But thank you for coming in to watch the show live. It's really, that's another thing where, you know, once upon a time, firstly, I was just recording it. It wasn't even live. And then even after it was live, you'd have nobody in the chat, no listeners, nothing, you know, just like one viewer that was me on my other monitor. So it's great to see the traction is always building up, and yeah, people.
Yeah, enthusiasm makes it so much better to create stuff if people are enthusiastic and just positively responding.
Yeah, exactly. Once people are giving you that positive energy back, it forms a bit of a feedback loop. You get motivated, you do better, and it all spreads around to everyone. So yeah, shout out to all the listeners of the show, live or not. All right, that'll do it. Thank you for listening. Until next time.
So I started realizing that if you can just find strength just a little bit longer, you will have a crew of people following you along the way.
And that is another thing that no one can ever teach you. Because you're going to have to learn that on your own. You're going to have to figure out how to pull that energy out of your mind on your own. There's no book you can read that all of a sudden I have it. I've got the technique now. I know how to do it.
Yeah.
No, it's a